My girlfriend and I had been dating for about 2 years before we broke up. She was somebody I thought I saw a future with, but I am glad that I found out the truth about her before I made a big step committing to her. We met on a dating app originally. Things actually didn't work out with us the first time we were seeing each other. We hooked up a couple of times, but neither of us was ready for a relationship, so we decided to stop seeing each other. About a year later, I ran into her at a supermarket and we both recognized each other. I think during that run-in, we both thought that giving it another chance might be worth it. We started officially dating, and within a couple of weeks, we were committed to each other. I introduced her to my family about 6 months into our relationship, and they all loved her. They thought she was exactly what I had been looking for in a partner, and I agreed with them. About a year into my relationship with my girlfriend, my parents got a divorce. It was difficult for me to comprehend why they were getting a divorce, but I was an adult, and I wanted both of them to be happy. If ending their marriage was what was best for them, then so be it. Even though they were getting a divorce, they still remained cordial with each other, at least around other family members, so we could have holidays as we normally did. My mom started dating somebody shortly after the divorce was finalized, and she eloped with him. I guess he was technically my stepfather. After my mother got married to him, she called my sister and me to come over for dinner and meet the new guy. My girlfriend was close to the family, so she came along too. I thought he seemed nice. There weren't any glaring red flags that I was worried about. My mom lived about 3 hours away from me, so whenever I visited her, I normally stayed the night in my old bedroom. My girlfriend slept there with me that night. There was a point where I noticed she wasn't in bed, but she was the kind of person who frequently got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, so I didn't think too much of it. I'd normally stay for breakfast with my mom after I slept over at her house, but in the morning my girlfriend was rushing me out. She didn't explain why, but she just needed to leave. I ended up doing what she said and saying goodbye to my mom before breakfast. When I asked my girlfriend about why she was in such a hurry, she just told me that she had a nightmare and needed to leave because she felt weird being there. Several months passed, and we were getting ready to plan for Thanksgiving. My dad had just moved into a new house and was settling down, so he wanted to host. Because we were all still a family and we all wanted to be together on the holidays, my mother planned on coming to Thanksgiving with her new husband. My father was cool with it, and he was prepared for everything that might come. So they didn't have to make the drive in the morning. I invited my mother and stepfather to come stay at my house the night before. They arrived Wednesday night, and we had a nice dinner together and caught up after not having seen each other for a few weeks. Throughout the dinner, I noticed that my girlfriend was very quiet. She didn't have much to say, which was very unusual for her. Looking back, she was looking at her smartwatch a lot and messages that were coming through. Knowing what I know now, my stepfather was on his phone a lot messaging someone. I didn't have any reason to assume he was texting her at the time, but I know now that he was. I asked her if everything was all right after dinner while we were cleaning up, and she told me that she had just come down with a headache. Shortly after dinner, she excused herself to lie down because of it. That left me alone with my mother and new stepfather to chat about life. We put on a movie, and about 15 minutes into it, my stepfather yawned and made a big thing about being tired and wanting to get ready for bed. My mother told him that she'd been wanting to see the movie and told him to go ahead without her. He announced that he was going to get in the shower and then go to sleep. I didn't think twice about it. After the movie, I went back to my room to go to sleep with my girlfriend. We left in the morning in a hurry and drove over to my father's house. I realized shortly after that I had forgotten 2 pans that I promised my dad that I was going to bring for him to borrow. I told everybody else that I would just run back really quick to my house and grab them. I drove home and ran into the kitchen to grab the pan. While I was there, I went into my bedroom to use the bathroom really quickly. While I was there, I heard some buzzing in the bedroom and didn't know what it was. When I got out, I saw that my girlfriend's watch was on the charger by the bed. She took it with her everywhere, so I was surprised that she left it behind, but we left in such a rush that I didn't think too much about it. I figured I would grab it for her and bring it to my dad's house so she could have it. When I took it off the charger, I saw that the first notification that was on it was a text message from my stepfather. Right away, that drew some suspicion for me. I didn't know why they would have been texting each other. I opened the message to see what it was, and I was completely floored by it. I couldn't see a message history on the watch, but it was an overtly sexual message. I honestly felt dizzy after I read it, like I was going to pass out from the shock of it all. I knew that my girlfriend had a messaging app on her computer that was linked to her phone, so she could discreetly send text messages while she was working. So I grabbed a laptop and tried to see if I could find anything on it. It wasn't a complete history of text messages. I could tell that those messages were separate from the ones on her phone, though I did still find some interesting things. The biggest thing was that she was sending explicit messages to my stepfather while she was at work. Apparently, it was something that both of them were very attracted to. They seemed to like the idea of doing something that they shouldn't while they were working. There were pictures sent of my girlfriend lifting up her shirt and exposing herself from her computer camera, as well as pictures of my stepfather from under the desk in his office. Essentially, they were spending a lot of time at work, sexting instead of working. As soon as I saw everything, I knew that there wasn't a chance in hell that I would be staying with my girlfriend. So I took some screenshots from her messages and emailed them to myself. I wanted to have those as an option to get a little revenge on them, both for what they did. I went over to my dad's house, trying to think about what I was going to do on the drive there. My girlfriend's watch kept buzzing from messages my stepfather sent her. From what I could gather, they were trying to figure out a way to sneak off together to hook up. Part of me wanted to go into the dinner and expose both of them right away, but another part wanted to make sure I humiliated them. I got there, and I decided that holding on to my girlfriend's watch and waiting to see what happened would be the best idea. I pretended like everything was normal when I walked in. Every time her watch buzzed, I discreetly looked at it to see what the messages were. Honestly, I was a little bit grossed out about the things Dan was saying to her. It seemed like they had some kind of dom-sub thing going on, which was strange because my girlfriend never expressed interest in anything like that. He just kept telling her to do things, and a few minutes later, she would do what he said. It was bizarre. We had dinner, and I was noticeably quiet during it. Sitting across from my girlfriend like nothing was happening was painful, but I did it. My stepdad sent her a message halfway through dinner that I took a quick peek at. He told her to meet him in my car after dinner. I planned on making sure everybody knew about what was happening. We all enjoyed the rest of our dinner and had some light conversation. When we were all done, we gathered in my father's living room and turned on the game. My mother and father were actually getting along very well, better than I thought they would initially. They were laughing with each other and sharing a lot of memories. My girlfriend told everybody that she needed some fresh air and was going to go stretch her legs outside. I offered to go with her, knowing that she was going to have to turn me down, and she just said that she wanted some time alone. About 5 minutes after that, my stepdad started digging around in his pockets, saying that he didn't know where his keys were. Why he needed his keys at that specific moment, I couldn't tell you. He asked me for my car keys, so he could check in my car to see if you dropped them on the way up. I knew exactly what was about to happen, but I needed to let them do what they were going to do so I could catch them. I gave him the keys and didn't say anything. My stepdad still hadn't come back inside from looking for his keys after a few minutes. I told my mom that I thought it was weird, and she went out to check on him. They were both in the backseat of my car and in various states of undress while having sex. My mom screamed and threw the car door open and yelled at my stepdad, asking him what he was doing. My dad ran out of the house a few minutes later to see what was going on. When he realized what was happening, he ran at my stepdad, and I had to grab my dad to keep him away from him. Honestly, I know physical violence isn't something I should approve of, but I had a lot of respect for him at that moment. He and my mom had just divorced, but he was jumping to defend her honor, and I thought it was admirable. They tried to explain what was happening, but there was nothing they could say to make what they were doing okay. I told my girlfriend that I wanted her out of my house, and there was nothing she could say about it. She tried to plead with me to give her some time, but I told her that she had until the end of the day Friday to be out. She called an Uber with my stepfather, and they both left. I didn't love the idea of them going back to my house together, but there wasn't much that I could do about it. I returned to my house with my mother the following day and saw that my girlfriend was still there. My stepfather had left, but my girlfriend was refusing to leave. She said that she was technically a tenant there, and she had rights, and she was entitled to stay and have time to pack her things and find a new place. It was a nightmare situation of her just trying to stay there as long as she could without having to pay any rent. There was a 2-week window of time when she was still in my house and the tensions were high between us. She took it upon herself to tell me that my stepfather was better in bed than I was, and she told me about how they were sneaking around behind our backs since the day they met. That explained why my girlfriend was so eager to leave the first time we met him. She might have felt guilty then, but it didn't seem like she felt that any time after. When she left, I decided that I was going to send the screenshots I had of her doing inappropriate things at work to her boss. I found out through the grapevine that she and my stepfather both got fired for their behavior. It definitely went against their codes of conduct. Now, I am single and hoping to find somebody who isn't a nightmare. My mother divorced her husband, and she is now taking time for herself. After everything that happened, my father has still been there for her. There's a small part of me that hopes they'll get back together. OP, I'm so sorry you had to go through all of this. It definitely sounds like a nightmare situation to go through. I agree, your girlfriend probably wanted to leave the morning after dinner at your mom's house because she felt guilty about what she did. If she hooked up with your stepfather the night before, then she might have had regrets at first. I know a lot of people get excitement out of cheating and doing it so blatantly, and I just think it's disgusting. Cheating is already disrespectful, but doing it in a way where you might get caught is even lower. You know what you're doing is already going to hurt someone, and you risk having them catch you. It definitely seems like neither of them had anyone's interest but their own in mind. They were selfish and careless, and both of them got what they deserved getting fired. They probably should have had more go wrong than that. Now let's get into our second story for today. My wife and I have been married for 8 years. We met in the workplace and started dating a few months after we started talking to each other. I thought she was the love of my life. I saw a future with her, and I wanted to build a family with her. She worked in the HR department, and I was in our sales department. Because of my job, I travel a lot for work. It was a perk that I really loved until I met her. I hated the times that I had to go away and leave her back home all by herself. We got married after 2 years of dating, and we were working on building our dream home from the ground up. We found a plot of land and decided that instead of looking for a house and remodeling it to fit what we wanted, it would be better to just do it ourselves. It was a big endeavor, and it was stressful at times, but we didn't regret it for a second. We hired a project manager. We'll call him Cliff. He was a jack of all trades when it came to construction work. He knew every type of person we needed to get the house up and running. I made really good money, and I was at the top of my field. Because of that, with everything going on with the house, I thought it might be beneficial for my wife to quit her job in the HR department and focus on getting all that together. We agreed that she would quit and focus on building the house. She was spending a lot of time with Cliff, which I didn't think much about because he was about 20 years older than her and married. I knew that there were a lot of days where Cliff would be over at our apartment going over things with her, or she would be on the build sites checking on things. Every time Cliff was over at our apartment, he was gone before I came home. I didn't think much about it, and honestly, I was kind of relieved. The last thing I wanted to do after a long day at work was go home and make small talk with someone I barely knew. The only thing that occurred to me and struck me as somewhat odd was that sometimes I would come home on days that Cliff was at the apartment, and my wife would be fresh out of the shower by the time I arrived. I never said anything about it, but I thought it was strange. Looking back, I realized that she was likely showering after sleeping with him. I had a big sales meeting to go to in Arizona, so I made all of my travel arrangements, and I was scheduled to be gone for 4 days. I left for the conference, and the first 2 days were fine. My wife usually called me around dinner time while I was away, and she did just as she always did one night. I was at dinner with a colleague, so I didn't answer the phone. I knew that it was my wife, and I figured she would just send me a text message after I didn't answer. I didn't pay attention to my phone for the rest of the night, but when I got back to my hotel room, I saw that I had a 3-minute long voicemail from her. We never left voicemails for each other, so it was odd. On top of that, it was 3 minutes long. I have never seen a voicemail that long in my entire life. I listened to it and was pretty surprised about what I heard. At first, it was just some jumbled noises in the background, and I thought maybe she put the phone in her pockets and was just walking around the house. I almost stopped and deleted it, but then I saw the transcript. There were some indications that she might have been having a conversation with someone, so my curiosity got the better of me and I listened to it. I heard a voice that I immediately recognized as Cliff's not far away from the phone. He asked if I answered, and my wife said that I didn't. He asked her how long he had to wait until he could touch her again, and she told him that since he hadn't answered her call, she wouldn't answer mine. It was quiet on the other end for the most part, but I heard an occasional moan from my wife. Toward the end of the voicemail, Cliff said something that indicated that he had performed some kind of sexual act on my wife during the voicemail recording. They both proceeded to tell each other very dirty things, and then the voicemail cut off. I was beyond shocked at what happened, and I immediately changed my flight time to leave the following morning. It was clear that my wife was having sex with Cliff. I put other pieces together after I heard the voicemail, and I figured it might have been happening for a little while. I got back to my apartment in the early afternoon the following day. I wasn't expecting to walk in on my wife sleeping with Cliff, but I did. They were taking full advantage of my absence. They stepped away from each other when they saw me, and I practically pushed Cliff out of the door of my apartment so he would leave. I told him that he was fired from the job, and he asked me to reconsider. I just slammed the door in his face. My wife tried to explain what was happening to me, but I wasn't hearing it. She kept asking me about why I was home early, and I played the voicemail for her. She immediately knew that there wasn't anything that she could do to recover from that. I told her that I wasn't going to be with a cheater, and I planned on divorcing her. I think she thought she might have some ground to stand on in the divorce, but I knew that she wouldn't. On top of firing Cliff from a job that he was making a lot of money from, I told his wife about the affair. From what I gathered, it wasn't his first time sleeping with someone else. However, she told me that it would be the last time you cheated on her. I was glad to find out that they had also gotten a divorce. My wife tried to argue that she should get to keep the house that we were building because she was the one putting in all of the work for it. It was her design. She was overseeing the construction, everything. Luckily for me, my divorce attorney was incredible, and they didn't let that happen. I was awarded the house, and I hired someone else to finish off where Cliff stopped. I made sure the house was everything my wife ever wanted in a home. I sold it after it was finished. I didn't need the money, I just didn't want the house. When my wife saw that, she called me and yelled at me for selling the house that she would have happily taken, but it was mine, and I didn't owe it to her. I'm working now to try and move on from this. I had never been cheated on in my life before this. I know that there are people out there who wouldn't behave the way that she did, but it's hard to move past. I'm hoping that sometime soon in the future, I'll be able to move on. OP, I can't imagine finding out about an affair the way that you did. Catching her through a voicemail and listening to it, wondering if what you heard is really what happened has to be difficult. It definitely seems like they were waiting for you to leave so they can have their time together. On top of that, it doesn't seem like they were doing a lot of work for the house while you're at work. Your wife showering after Cliff left was the giveaway as to what was happening between them. You definitely can't blame yourself for not seeing those signs. When you marry somebody, you trust them, and you don't expect that they will hurt you in any way. Both of them were extremely selfish in everything they did, and I'm glad that they didn't wind up happy in the end. Your wife didn't deserve the house that was being built. The audacity of your wife, acting like you were in the wrong for selling the house, is incredible. She cheated on you, and she still thought she deserved the house. It doesn't even make sense. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care.